I'm Joseph Benson. I'm with Lubrizol Corporation, and I'm going to be interviewing you today. Can you describe to me a time when you had to communicate important information during a shift turnover?
Sure. As a teacher and department head, sometimes I was called out for meetings at the last minute, and so I would have to turn over my classroom to another teacher. And so what I would have to do is tell the teacher what was happening in the classroom, tell them what my lesson objective was, what was happening in the lesson, what they were currently working on, and what the expectations were for the end of the lesson. Also, before I left, I would ensure that the teacher was aware of any issues that were going on in the classroom, between students, or if they were allowed to use certain technology or anything like that. And so this would allow for my lessons to be completed, even though I was not in the room.
Okay. Tell me about a time you were involved in an emergency response situation and how you handled it.
Okay. So a few years ago, as a teacher, we had a unknown intruder come into the building during transition time. And so one of the ways that we were trained was a lockdown intruder protocol. And as part of the protocol, we were trained to move the students into the rooms. And so I would ensure that all of the students were in the room, making sure the hallway was clear. Once the students were in the room, we were trained to lock the door and turn off the lights. So I would make sure that that was done. And then the last thing that we were instructed to do and trained to do was to make sure that the students stayed quiet and that they were calm and didn't make any noise. And we would listen for any further instructions, either phone call to the cell phone or over the intercom, to let us know that it was safe for us to move. And then in this specific situation, the person was apprehended very quickly. There was no injuries to any students or staff, and so it was a very successful lockdown procedure.
Okay. Can you provide an example of how you managed multiple tasks simultaneously in a production environment?
So as a teacher, our primary role is to give instruction to our students, but that's not the only thing that a teacher does in the classroom. So we are, our main priority is instruction, but we also have to answer phone calls, answer emails, deal with classroom management, any issues that arise between students, any disagreements, any unsuspected visitors, so any administration coming into the classroom and any of those things. And so the way that I would deal with that is, first I would prioritize. So lesson always comes first. And if we were to get a phone call, then I knew that they were instructed to not call unless it was an emergency or something that was important. And so I would take my time and take that phone call. And then I would go back to my lesson. If at any point in time during the lesson I knew that the students were going to be working independently, then I would take that time to take attendance or to look at emails, answer any emails or anything like that. Then when we had some time, I would address any issues that students had. So if they needed more one-on-one, or if I had to reteach a portion of the lesson and things like that. And so this ensured that I had a very well-managed classroom. All of the duties were done in a timely manner, and the classroom ran smoothly.
Okay. Tell me about a time you had to record in long production data.
So as a teacher, you have to know your data very well, and so student data was a very important key to making lessons and to designing future lessons and anything like that. So it was just driving for anything that we did in the classroom. And so for data collection, we had to design assessments that would give us accurate information about student learning. And so I would utilize district provided digital resources to collect this data, and then I would analyze this data. Now the limitations to this was that the school, for the one that I worked for, didn't have an actual required procedure for logging all of this data. And so I designed my own method to collect this data and be able to access it very quickly. And so what I did is I would take the data from this system and I would input it into an Excel worksheet where I kept running data for all of my students, and it was individual for each one. I was able to track their current data, look at historical data, and use this to plan for future intervention for all of my students. And so this allowed me to maintain a very rigorous classroom and also meet any of the requirements dictated by the district.
All right. Okay, can you describe to me a time when you had to troubleshoot a piece of equipment or an issue?
Okay, so in the classroom, we do have some technology that we work with. So, for example, whiteboards, computers, things like that. And so normally we only do the basic troubleshooting for that. So turning on and off, identifying any issues. Where troubleshooting comes in for us is for lesson mastery. So the state of Texas gives teachers a list of learning objectives that the students have to master. And my job as a teacher is ensuring that the students master this. And the way that we determine that mastery is whether they pass or fail for each objective. And so the way we determine that is by giving the students assessments. Once you give the student an assessment and you get that data back, you have one of three options. And those options depend on the data that you receive. So for example, if I get my data back and it says that more than 60% of my students did not meet the requirements for passing that lesson objective, then I would design a new reteach lesson and then reteach it to the students. Second option was if 40 to 50% of the students did not master this objective, then I would design my future lesson to incorporate some of the part of that learning objective to review. And I would place students who had mastered with students that did not master so that they can collaborate and work together and try to figure this out. And finally, if less than 20% of my students did not master, then that would be a more one-on-one intervention. I would pull them out at a different time and reteach the lesson. For all three of those options, the final result would be I reassess the students to ensure that they did master the lesson or master the objective. And if they did, then we can continue. If they didn't, then I would repeat the process.
Okay. We got time for one more question. So, tell me about a time you had to quickly adapt to a significant change at work.
Okay. So for this one, for the school that I was working for previously, it was a very specialized school. In this school, we taught incoming students from different countries. That meant that they had little to no English. And so we would help them get their high school diploma as well as helping them learn the English language. And so as part of that program, we were trained to work with a program called QTEL. And so through this program, we designed lessons to incorporate more learning opportunities for English for these students. And so what happened was in the last school year, we received a new superintendent for our district. And the new superintendent made it a mandate that he wanted all schools to follow the same calendars, the same courses, and he wanted to see uniformity among the different schools. So our school had to quickly adapt to this. I personally had to look at all of the courses, all of the curriculum, the new calendars, and then just kind of see where I could incorporate some of those QTEL teaching methodologies into the new requirements. And so I spent a lot of time incorporating my old techniques into what was now required, and I was able to meet the district requirements as well as still providing what we had promised to the students, and the students were very successful for this last school year.
Okay. Well, that concludes what we can cover today. Thank you for coming to this interview, and we'll let you know how you did.
Thank you so much. Thank you.